All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Chav Zayin. Ches. So we left off with towards the top of Chav Zayin with Aleph. I believe it's 5 lines in the top. So there's a question in the Gemara. It's been probably going through the last Amud or so. It was mentioned in the Mishnah, a person can go ahead and acquire movable objects along with real estate, things sheish lamachrayis, as it's referred to. And the question is, so of course, the halacha is that it works. You can go ahead and acquire with it. The question is, do those movable objects have to be on top of that land in order for it to work, or can they be anywhere in the world? We've have brought several potential proofs, and they've all been deflected. So let's try again. So Tashma, come and listen. The Amar Rav Bar Yitzchak, 5 lines in the top and Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Damar Rav Bar Yitzchak Amar Rav Shnei Shtaros. There's two halachas when it comes to shtaros, and then we're going to have some side points, nothing to really to do with our point until the end. Zochel b'sada zu. A guy says, go ahead and acquire this field leploni for on behalf of somebody else, and then he also says v'kis v'lo es shtar. And he says you could write him a shtar of proof. The shtar is not what is performing the kinyan. Rather, it's proof later on. If people say, "Hey, this is not your field. It was, originally belonged to Ruvain." You'll be able to show that Ruvain, that Ruvain, sold it to you. So Chayzer b'shtar, he can go ahead and renege on his and say, "You know what? I don't want you writing that shtar." However, but once he goes ahead and he makes it to the field, then he can't go back on it. However, if he says to him, "Almanas shetichtu as a shtar," you can go ahead and acquire the field, and then you have it all in the condition that you write in the shtar. Then that since the field, right, is almanas, right, on the condition that you write for him a letter of proof, so therefore he can be chayzer on both. And Rav Chia bar Avin Omar Rav Huna shlosh shtaros. Hey, no, there's 3 halachas when it comes to shtaros. Trey, hey, had Amran 2, that what you said, don't disagree. And idach, and the other one is basically what we're going to go ahead and bring up proof from. Im kidem meicher. A person is selling something. Now, typically what happens is the buyer goes ahead and brings a document, says, I want to purchase it. He brings a document. But let's say, the seller goes ahead and writes a shtar and says, okay, this shtar is, I'm going to go ahead and sell it to so-and-so. Right? So if the seller, so basically the seller is now signing the shtar or writing the shtar for on behalf of the buyer. And it's like that which we learned. Even though the buyer is not with him, once the buyer goes ahead and makes a chazak on the karka, nikna shtar b'chol makom shehu. The shtar is acquired wherever it is, right? So in other words, the shtar of proof is acquired wherever it is. So shmami na. Let's learn from here because it says nikna shtar b'chol makom shehu. Shmami na lo bin in tzibur. So let's learn from here that it doesn't have to go ahead and be on top of the land for him to acquire the shtar with the land. The shtar is acquired even if it's in the guy's office. Sure, please, thank you. So he said, no, shani shtar the afsiro the orahu. No, maybe it's different. Maybe the shtar, the reason why it could be acquired wherever it is because it's like the handle or the leash to the land. It's like it's part of the land, it's part of the proof of it. So therefore, yeah, you acquire it wherever it is. It's not considered to be something separate. So the Gemara says,
it can be filed in a land office.
Right, it's not. It doesn't.
A registry office.
Right, but the reason why it works is because maybe it's like connected to the land. It's like the leash to the land. So Gemara says no, but on this it says v'holak tani zohi sheninu. It says on this is basically an example of that which we learn. Right, and it says no. This is something that it could be acquired with land through kesef shtar v'chazaka. So therefore, since it said this is the classic rule of acquiring movable objects with land, indeed, learn from here that you don't need to go ahead and leave it on top of it. Fine. So now that question is settled. We had a shmami no. Now, indeed, we're also going to have hilchasa in a moment. So it says, does he have to go ahead and say, you're going to go ahead and acquire, let's say, this bicycle, right? We'll assume is a movable object. Agav, you acquiring the land. So does he have to say agav or no? So Tashma, come and listen. The Ktani Kolhan, the like Ktani agav. So it says all these halachas, you can go ahead and acquire it, and never mentions once that he says agav. So he says, Tanich, Tani mi Ktani. Does it say that when the seller says acquire this land, does the Mishnah say that? Ella, right? Doesn't say it. El Adam or Kana. Right, really, but we know he has to go ahead and say, "Hey, you acquire the land," and then the guy can acquire the land, right? So over here when it says agav, adam or agav, the hilchasa and Allah is sibar and lebin and agav. That in order if you can go ahead and acquire movable objects along with real estate, then it does not need to go ahead and be on top of that real estate. And furthermore, agav the kani, but right, the person is acquiring that he must say agav, you acquire the bicycle, agav the land. And he also must say, acquire the land, kani, and therefore that's how it works. Fine. 2 dots, smack in the middle of Chav Zayin and Alf. Iborlu. I'm going to go ahead and sell this field, and whoever buys this field will get a free lawnmower with it, right? Through matana. So mahu. Does that work? Can one go ahead and acquire the 2 of them? Now, till now, we've been talking about, okay, you buy the 2 of them and you acquire the 2 of them. Well, let's say one is coming as a sale and the other one is coming as a gift. So Tashma, come listen. So he says, so we had the case on top where the guy was away and he says, okay, this part of the field will go ahead and be leased to Yeshua, right, to Yeshua and Hanania. Right? In other words, the place will be him, and the meiser will go to him. The movable objects will go to him as a gift, and the land will be leased to him. So what do you see over there? The land will be leased, i.e., that's like a mefer, and the meiser will go to him, which is a gift. So therefore, you see a gift and a land can come derech, aga, or through this way. So shmamina, indeed, I'll learn through there. Nice question. Let's say, right, I'm selling land to Ozzy, and I also want to go ahead and sell my lawnmower to Randy, right? So can Ozzy make the kinyan on the land? And because of that, the deal was, and then with him making a kinyan on the land, then he makes a kinyan on the lawnmower, right? And Randy's not around. He's in the Carolinas, right? He's busy, right? So can he go ahead and do it? So Tashma, let's look at that case we had earlier. Right? The Maisa Ani, then we go ahead and give, right? That will be the stuff on the land that I'm going to go ahead and rent or lease out to Rabbi Akiva, in order that he'll go ahead and the anim will get the Meiser Ani. So what do you see over there? The land goes to Rebbe Kiva, and the Meiser Ani goes to the poor. 2 different parties.
Yeah, doesn't the Meiser go with the land, and then essentially goes from him to the poor? You know what I'm saying? Doesn't it?
So in this case, the Gemara is actually going to reflect this. So my muskar. What does it mean, muskar?
Was the
So that's it. So my muskar. So muskar the meiser. So first, maybe it means that it wasn't really leased to him. Really, it was he was overseeing it, but it was leased to the anim. So it was basically the same party, right? That was getting the property, that was getting the land, as the ones getting the movable objects, or biboy same, or you can say another teretz similar to that, which is Eddie just said. Right? He was in charge. He was in charge of giving out the poor. So therefore, Lamaisa, it was going to him, and he was going to go ahead and giving out. There was renting a space in Highland Park. To Zevi, because Zevi's in charge of giving out the food, right? So that was Rebbe Kiva, right? Zevi gets a shout out to him. Fine.
Right now, Alan.
Yeah. Amar Rava. So Rava says, "Loishanu elashinasan demekulan." By the way, all these cases when you want to go ahead and acquire the land, makes a chazaka. It's only when he gives the full amount. But if the land, right? In other words, he gave the money, but he was going to go ahead and make a kid in the land. He has not acquired Ella Keneged Ma'osav, only the amount that he paid. So if he paid 40%, he only acquires 40% of the land. And Tani Kvasi the Rava, we have a Bryce in support of Rava. We'll see at the end of the Bryce. So it's a general Bryce that says Yafet Koyach HaKesef Mikoyach HaShtar V'Koyach HaShtar Mikoyach HaKesef. There are aspects where acquiring something through money is stronger than that of shtar, and there are aspects of shtar is stronger than that of cash. So that cash could be used to go ahead and redeem hektish or redeem ma'aser sheni, but you can't write a shtar. It says like an IOU to ma'aser sheni or to hektish. Mashen came a shtar where it doesn't work, like we just said. The yafik koyach hashtar, and also the shtar structure. Shtar might see b'bas Yisrael. Mashen came b'kesef, right? That a shtar can be used to go ahead and divorce a woman, i.e., a get, as opposed to money. You can't just say, okay, here is your money. Right, here's your, I'll give you $10,000. You're a free woman. That does not work. You still need a shtar. The Yafikoch Shnehem, and the two of them, Shtar and Kesef, are both strong in Mikach Chazak in certain aspects, and V'koch Chazaka Mikach Shnehem are stronger than them. Yafikoch Shnehem, both Kesef and Shtar are stronger than Chazaka. Shnehem Koyin and Eved Ivri. Those can be used to acquire Eved Ivri, but a Chazaka can't. It's not just the Eved Ivri. If a fellow Jewish man who's, let's say, he just starts working for you, that does not make an Eved Ivri, but a Shtar or Kesef does. Which does not work. That by chazaka machalo eser sados. If I go ahead and I sell him, 10 fields, beser medinos, and 10 different lands. Kevan shehichzik ba'achas mehen tanakula. Once he makes a chazaka on one of them, 10 different locations. Once he makes a chazaka on one of them, then he basically acquires all of them, right? Which is not found by kesef shtar, right? You can't just acquire one; you have to do a kinyan on all. The medvar murav. With what are we talking about? Shenasan lo to make kulon. Right, this is why we brought it. When he gives him all the money, about loy nasan to make kulon, but if he did not give him all the cash, then loikana ella keneged ma'osav. But he only owns keneged ma'osav, amount that he paid. If he didn't pay it all, then if he only paid 40%, then he only gets 40%.
He's paying in installments. So in theory, each part of the payment goes to each field.
I guess to go right.
So he'd still have what would you say then that he
right? So installments, the installments wouldn't work, right? Because obviously over here,
he walks in the one that he's sitting in.
I mean, if the guy didn't agree upon it, then l'chara shouldn't work at all, right? So obviously he's agreeing, to some sort of installment plan.
Is he calling at least the one that he's in? If he's going
So assuming that's at least connected ma'osav, right? At least connected ma'osav, right? And l'chara would be, let's say he gave 40%, and there were 10 lands, and each one is equal. If he made a chazaka on one, right, l'chara he probably does get 4 fields. It was 40%, just how and which ones, but l'chara that would work. And beside Shmuel, this should be a proof for that what Shmuel said. Damar Shmuel, Makalo Esther Sadais Beser Medina's person sold someone 10 lands in 10 different areas. Kevan Sheikh Sigvachas Mehen Kanas Kulan. Once he makes a chazak on one of them, then he acquires all. So Tata, you should know. Sheilu Masarloi, of course it should work. Why? Sheilu Masarloi Esther Behemas Ba'asrachad. Let's say he gave him 10 different animals, but they're like attached like a long leash. The Amar Leid, he says to him, Kani, right? And he says, acquire it here, hold on to the leash, right? The showing his ownership, pull it, whatever. Milai Kani, would he not go ahead and acquire them? Right? So it's the same thing. So therefore, just like the one leash acquires the 10 animals, so too the one land acquires the 10 lands. Amar Leid, Midab, Hasa Migidu Biyado. Over there, it's in his hand. Hacha Migidu Biyado, but over there, all the lands are not in his hand. Only one of them made a chazakan. So why is that a comparable case? And Ikadami saw a different version. Amar Rav Hachaber Rav Ika Teda the Loikani. He does not acquire all the lands. Why? If he gave him 10 animals, with one leash. Amar Loi Zukani. Right? He tells him this one, i.e., the first one, you should acquire. So Mikani, does he acquire the others? He does not. So it's over here, he makes a chazaka on one of the lands. So why should he acquire the other ones? So Mara says, no, Midami, how can you compare the two? Hasam, Gufim Mechlakim. Over there, it's different animals. Hacha, Sadna Diora Chadu. Right? It's one land, right? It's one land. It's the world is one. You don't have to say Pangea, right? But it's one land, and therefore all the lands are connected, and therefore it's considered to be if I all connected with Gufechad. If I make a kinyan one, I should acquire the others, and therefore it would be argue with Shmuel.
Well, the issue is that he said Zo, right?
Right, in the case of the animals, right? Because that was also when I first learned it. I'm like, wait, why should he not acquire it? Right, when he says Zu, right? And Rashi says Zu b'lo yacher, right? Right, Mikani la shara, right? Ha'amar Zu ha'chanami kiyachas, right? Fine. Now, so we said in the Mishnah on Chavot Amud Aleph at the top. A person acquires the two things together, and then let's say he has a case of Maida Mixus, right? Maida Mixus, in other words, we know Maida Mixus a person has, right? He says, you owe me something, and the guy says, oh, I do owe you, but not the amount you claim. So we can throw it all in together, both movable objects and the land. In this case, even though there are different types of assets, right? The classic case is, you owe me $200. The guy says, I owe you money, but not $200 or $100. So that's all cash. Over here, the guy could say, you owe me $200. He says, no, I owe you, and you owe me $200 and that parcel land. He says, first of all, I don't owe you $200. I owe you $100. Second of all, I don't owe you land, right? So we can be Zaykin, right? We can say that he can make a shua on the land. Now, Omar Ula Minayin LeGilgul Shvua Minatera. How do we know Gilgul Shvua Minatera? Now, Gilgul Shvua is, like the role. In other words, since you're making a shvua on this money that you're claiming you don't own, we could also be megalgil and let you say, hey, once you're here making a shvua, now make a shvua on this, this, and this. Okay? So, where do we know this concept in the Torah that once someone's making a shvua, that he's obligated to make a shvua on one thing, we can go ahead and make him make a shvua on something else that in itself he wouldn't have had to make a shvua otherwise. Right? It's called Gilgul Shvua. So how do we know that? So it says by a sota, right? So before she drinks, the water that was mixed for her. So the Kohanim say over the this parshater, and she says amen amen. What's the amen amen? V'tanan amahi omeres amen amen. Amen ala Allah, amen ala shvua. Right. So the amen for the curse, right? She gets cursed if she was been unfaithful. She'll be cursed. Right, then she'll die, and also Amen al Shvua that she's promising that she didn't do anything. So it's two. Amen mi'ish zeh, Amen mi'ish acher. Right, not only the guy that she was warned from, Bob, but anybody else that she might have been with that the husband was not aware of. And also Amen Shaloi says Idi Arusa v'Nasuv v'Shemeres Yavam u'Kenusa. Also that she was not unfaithful when she was in Arusa, when she was only betrothed. Right, or fully married, or shomer siyavim, or we're talking about a case. This eventual sota was a woman basically who only married her husband because it was yibum performed because her original husband died, and therefore she married the brother. So she was not unfaithful while she was a shomer siyavim waiting for yibum, or then she was not unfaithful after knusa after he took her in yibum. So the Gemara pauses and says, Hi Arusa Hechidam. What's this case of Arusa? Why is she making a shua while she's in Arusa? So what's the scenario? If we're talking about a case that this sota occurrence is going on while she's still in Arusa, no, she's only betrothed, they weren't fully married yet. But now we learn in the Mishnah, Arusa v'shemer right? There is no drinking, there is no taking their ksuba, right? They just goodbye, right? If she was warned during that scenario, if she was with somebody else, then goodbye. You can't go ahead and marry her. She walks away, and that's it. My time. What's the reason? Because the pasuk says tachasi sheikh, right? When she was married, while she was married, and she was not married yet, while she's in Arusa, she was only betrothed. And so tachasi sheikh, and you don't have that in this situation. So Ella, so that can't be the case of Arusa. So why is she making a shul while in Arusa? Ella, the kind of like she Arusa. Maybe he warned her when she was in Arusa, right? There was already some, funny business. Arusa, I heard you're hanging around this guy, Bob. Why don't you stay away? He warns her that. Then there were witnesses to her being alone with Bob in a secluded area. And then he marries her. Then this whole occurrence occurs after they got fully married. The Gemara says, would the water work in this scenario? The pasuk says, "V'naka ish mi'ava." right? That the man shall be clean of avera. Amrachmana bisman she'ish menuka mi'avai. Only when the man is clean from avon, and we learned from over there. What does that mean? It means when he's not lied with her, he's not been with her. So if he married her, right, during this time after she was nistera, right, after she was in seclusion, if he married her then, well, now that she's right, he lied with her, right? He's been with her since the whole scenario of her being in seclusion. So Einish, and which is Einish Nuka Mi'avon, and therefore if he's not, clean from Avon, then Einim Ayin Ben Nasisha, then the water would not go ahead and check his wife. So what's the scenario of Arusa? Ella, rather we must say Ayidei Gilgal. It must be through Gilgal that really this whole scenario played out while she was fully married, while she's in the Nesua. But once he's going to go ahead and make her make a shvua, midaraisa, she's obligated to go ahead and make a shvua. And regarding to her, while she was married, that nothing happened between her and Bab, he can go ahead and make the megalgal that shvua to cover other areas where otherwise he would not have been able to go ahead and make her make a shvua. So therefore, we see the gilgal shvua midaraisa. So Ashkenhan Saita, so we find by Sota, very good. We agree. That's 100% excellent proof. The Isura V'Mayna Minala. But what do we see by Mammon? Maybe money claims are different, right? Who says this is we can megalgal when she's a Sota, right? To different times. So who says we can megalgal like money, like our situation? So Tana the Rabbi Shmuel Kavachemer. Maybe we can learn a Kavachemer. Umat Saita Shalo. So by Sota, right? Which we don't normally allow so easily to swear. In other words, there has to be two witnesses to go ahead and see that she was in seclusion. Nevertheless, by Sota, where we require two megalglin, we do go ahead and have a gilgal shua. So Mammon, but Mammon, when there is, let's say, an obligation to swear even for one witness. In other words, if I say, Eddie, you owe me $100, and he says, I don't owe you nothing, right? So obviously I can't make you swear. But if Mark said, yeah, I saw Yoel give you $100, so then you make a shvua. So one person, in that case, Mark can go ahead and obligate someone to make a shvua. So in a case where one person, right, Mama, so isn't it obvious we can go ahead and be megalgal? So the Gemara says, so Ashkam Vadai. Okay, we find the case of a Vadai claim. Suffolk Minala. Whatever the Suffolk claim, person is unsure. How can we see that an unsure claim can be sworn upon? So Tanya Rab Shimon Yochai, Omer. So time we learn about it. Rab Shimon Yochai Omer says Nemra Shua b'chutz v'Nemra Shua b'fnim. So this type of shua that's said b'chutz, i.e., a regular based in money cases, and also shua b'fnim. In the Mikdash, basically when we make the woman, the Sota, swear. That's what's called a Shua B'fnim in the base of Mikdash. Ma Shua Amar B'fnim, Asaba Savik Kavadai. Just like over there, that Shua was a Savik Kavadai. In other words, this husband does not know for certainty that anything happened between her and Bob, right? It was only, you guys were in seclusion. I don't know what happened, and therefore make a Shua. He doesn't have a Vadai claim of you committed adultery. He has a Suffolk claim. He doesn't know what happened. He wasn't there. So it's only a Suffolk claim. Nevertheless, we make that Suffolk Kavadai. So to any Shua Amar also about Suffolk Kavadai. Right? We make a Suffolk Kavadai. Fine. Period. Adhechan Gilgal Shua. To what point can we make somebody be Megalgal Shua? In other words, what type of Shua? How far off can it be? What do you mean? So let's see. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Amar Lei. You're already making me a shua. Let's say case about makes us also swear to me that I don't own you as my Eved Kanani. You're not my slave, right? Seems a little bit out there. So Gemara says, what are you talking about? What, such a claim? Person calls someone else an Eved Kanani, right? Right? The title of the Eved. Right? Yeah, neither way. Right? Someone calls his friend an Eved. He starts rumors an Eved. Then she's deserving to be put in nidui, in excommunication. Mamzer, if he calls him a mamzer, he says his parents, right, created mamzeras. The one who spreads that rumor gets malchus. Russia, if he calls him a Russia, right, the guy can go ahead and get back at him by even going ahead and competing in his business, right? You can go ahead and set up shop next door. Right? swear to me that you were not sold to me as an Eved Ivri. In other words, basically he's claiming that you owed me a large sum of money, you didn't pay me, and therefore you were sold to me as an Eved Ivri. The guy is saying, so the guy's denying it, but now through a Gilgal Shua, we'll go ahead and make him swear that. So the Gemara says, "Hi Tanu Sami, right? Well, this seems like a like doesn't seem so out there. You're saying what's an example of an extreme case of Gilgal Shua? Basically, this money claim. So the Gemara is saying, well, that doesn't seem so far fetched. So Rava Latame, Dama Rava, Eved Ivri Gufa Kadmi. So he said no, because we hold that Eved Ivri is Gufa Kadmi. So it's not just a money claim, but rather now he basically is owned to the master. So the Gemara said, "Ihachi hainu karka." Well, if he's owned to the master, like land, like this land is my land, so too, right? Not the song, right? But he says this land is my land, right? And the other guy said, so what's the difference between that and saying this guy is my slave? If the slave is just like karka, that's kanui low, so why is it any different than karka? Why is it so far fetched? So Madate Moshe said, "Karku dav the ichi dimzavni b'tzina." Right? When land is sold, there's not a big announcement; no one really knows, right? So therefore, it's shayach. For if a claim was, someone says I own this land and nobody had heard of it, but it's still very possible. He means it less like cola, right? There is no the public doesn't know. However, but a case of Eved Ivri, he means it if it was known that this guy was sold to him, call Isla, there would be people would know. It would be common knowledge, and therefore there's no common knowledge in this case. Therefore, there's no common knowledge. There's no kol. People would say this claim is a ludicrous claim, and therefore you shouldn't even have to be megaglush on it. Kamash Malon, that even if there's no code, but the guy says you owed me money and therefore you're sold to his Eved Ivri, he must, in such a case where he's already making a shvua, where megalgo the shvua that the guy says I was not sold to you as an Eved Ivri.
Eved Ivri would be sold by Basin.
Yeah, right, right.
So there's the call. Because it's
nobody says it, but there is no right, yeah,
right.
By land, it's not something that's done right. Does that mean done in courts?
Of course.
You want to answer the question on Eved Ivri, but skip the question on how far a Magambo can go.
Right. So even in that case, in other words, that even something that a guy owed, right? In other words, he's making a claim. Right, something so far-fetched, like you're my Eved Ivri, but no one knows you're my Eved Ivri. Even such a claim, we're Magagal Shul on that.
Therefore,
anything is up to that point, right? I guess things more, But we said if there's, that any money claim we say is a regular Gilgal Shul. So why the Gemara wanted to know why was this such an example of a far-fetched case of Magagal Shul? Is because typically if someone sold an Eved Ivri, everyone would know, and therefore. No one knows about this. He's not your Eved Ivri, so don't even make a shua. Kamash Malon that we would even make a Gilgal shua there. Fine. Mishnah. Kol hanase damim biyacher kevan shezach hazeh nitzchay zeh v'chalifah. So we'll start off right. So anything that is basically assessed. Right, or anything that's used for payments, let's say, call it anything that's used for payments with something else. Once one is zeich in it, then he's chayiv the other one to return it. In other words, over here we're going to start with the assumption that the person is doing chalipin with money. Now, chalipin is now when the by kinyanim the Gemara gets very the Gemara gets very technical. Because in essence, when I buy something, right, I'm giving you money, and you're giving me the object in return of the money, right? In order for any kinyan to work, there has to be gemiras das, right? Someone owns something, and he has to be given something to allow that object now ownership to go to the other person.
You need some consideration,
right? So normally, in a case of a sale, you give me money, and for you giving me that $20, right, I'm giving you this item. Right, for $20, I'm giving you this basketball for $20 because you please me, right? That's why we say a woman can't just be married for nothing, right? She's shavapruta, something she's given with that gemiras das. She allows the kinyan to have, and she's makna over her ishus, right? So chalipin, actually, there's two types of chalipin: one that's equal in value, and one that's not. But chalipin works in a similar manner, right? It's an exchange. It's not a purchase of I'm giving you money and purchasing this item. It's an exchange of one item for the other. Okay. Now, in this case, once someone, right? So if I go to Mark and Mark has a store, and I want to go ahead and buy a radio. I don't know if they still sell radios these days, right? I want to buy a radio from Mark, huh? The transistor radio, a VHS. All right. So I want to buy a radio from him. So we do chalipin. So Mark goes ahead and takes the money, and therefore I go ahead and I acquire the item. Right. So Ketzad, how so? So the Gemara then gives an example of hichlif shor b'para. So let's say someone is selling a short ox, and I bring you my cow or a chamor b'shor or a donkey for a shor. Once one acquires one, then he's required to give in the exchange. In other words, but let's say, even as the Gemara will point out, let's say I go ahead and so Mark was giving me a cow, right, and I was giving him my donkey, right. Once he made a kinyan on the right, once he acquired the cow, so I have to go ahead and give him the donkey. Now, if we find out that something happened to the donkey, I still obligated to go ahead and give him another donkey. I can't say this donkey was yours, because once you did the chalipin, right? Once one is acquired, the other one is acquired wherever it is, and he's obligated to go ahead and give that object. So that was the mission. So now the Gemara has a tough time understanding the Mishnah. So the Gemara says,
we're Kenyan Khalifin is
so
an object for another.
There's several types of, there's Kenyan Sudar, right, which is a kerchief, right, as we say, right? So that's a common thing, but that's normally not done as an equal exchange of value, right? Because the kerchief is not worth whatever you're acquiring. You know, when you do your chametz, right, you're using basically Kenyan Sudar, using a pen or whatever it is in return, right? In theory, that's your, it's now your pen. The rabbi is giving you his pen. You're giving him your chametz, or the right to sell your chametz, and therefore it's yours. If you want to give him the pen back as matana, that's fine. Can even be done with him not allowing you to do it, right? But there's, obviously a lot of understanding, and the Chazal right upon how these scenarios work. But that's normally say it's bartering. It's an exchange of one item for the other. So that's what's going on. And once one acquires one, then the other one is automatically due to the other one. And if something happens to it, he has to go ahead and pay. So the Gemara says, Chalipin, ma'inihu matbeya. So we said kol nasa dama, right? Anything that's used for money, right? Like payments, right? So that sounds like money, right? So it says Chalipin, ma'inihu matbeya. So Shmami, no, you want to from here matbeya nasa Chalipin, right? So it's about Chalipin, whether money can be the object that's used for Chalipin. It's in an exchange for a radio. We're going to do Chalipin through coins. So many hold that coins can't be used for Chalipin. Coins can only be used to buy it through Kesef, not Chalipin. So Rav Yehuda Hachi Kamar, Kol Hanishum Damim Abiacher, anything, right, that is used for payments, right, for something else, right? Anything that is assessed, right, that is appraised for money for something else, i.e., in this case, right, the example was, right, Hichlif Shor B'Para, right? So my shore is worth money. So anything that is assessed to be money will be for the para. So Kevan Shizach Hazeh, once one gets one, then so therefore, you got it. The host has asked you to start your video, okay? And you're okay. All right. Now, so in this case, we say that so since this can be assessed to money, the para or the shore, so therefore that's we use as chalipin. So now, okay, all makes sense. One says, right? I understand. Let's slow down here. I want to make you look silly, right? So what was your havamina? That money, right? This chalipin. So my Ketzad, what was your example? Well, how could you possibly even think he was talking about money, right? He's like, he's digging in. So Ketzad. So Hachi Gomer, Peiras Nami Abdi Chalipin, right? It's not just money, right? So now normally where do we learn a chalipin from? Right? By case of Boaz, right? So over there, right, he takes off his shoe, right? Takes off a shoe, and there's an exchange. So a shoe is a kli, right? So there's a machlokes as to, does it have to be dafka a kli that is chalipin? Is it matbeya, or it can even be peros, right? Peros is an object which is not matbeya, but it's also not a kli, right? Such as an actual, right, peros, fruit or food, right? Or animal, right? The animal is not a kli, right? It's also not a matbeya. So it's in the category of peros. So maybe we're thinking, what does it mean chalipin? It could be maybe peros. Hafigara peros nami have the chalipin keitzad, and therefore we'll get an example of hichlif basar shor b'para or basar chavra b'shor. Right? Kevan shezachazeh nischai b'chalipin. So since the meat of these animals, i.e. peros, therefore one is zech and one is chai b'chalipin. So nichalu rav sheishes devar peros adi chalipin. So this works well according to the opinion who holds taka. They can do chalipin with peros. El Rav Nachman the Omar Peros La'avdi Chalipin. But according to Rav Nachman, who says that in addition to not only Matbeya can't do it, and Peros also can't do it, you need a Kli. So how do you understand the Mishnah? So Achi Kamar. This would mean to say Yesh Damim Shehen Kichalipin. Right? There are times when money could be like Chalipin. Ketzad. What's the case? Hichlif Demei Shor B'Par. So let's say I go to Mark and I say, I want to buy your para, right? Your cow. So, and I owe you now $100, right? So the money for sure for your para, right? Oh, Demei Chova B'Shor. Right. So therefore, in this case, right? So we say, now you sell it to me, and then you make a kinyan on the animal. Now I owe you $100, right? Because I bought the para. Now I owe you $100. But in lieu of me actually paying you $100, you say, why don't you just give me an animal? So therefore, this is technically working, right? Even though that I really owed you $100, but and therefore normally you can't do chalipin with money. Nevertheless, you're taking it with an object, with an animal, right? So therefore, even though, yes, technically in the end, you are taking something, right, which is not money. So therefore, it works in this case. We'll say, because I have this debt, right, and you're going to make it, you'll say, Yoel, you never have cash in you. Why don't I just go ahead and take the chamor, right? The chamor b'shor. So my timer. So what's this? Really, money does acquire. All right. In other words, that in this case, how could you go ahead and acquire it? Right. In this case, how did I acquire the original animal? Right. There was no mashicha. Right. So really, midaraisa mos kanos. Matam amra mashicha. So midaraisa, if I give you money, right, technically wherever the object is that I bought is now mine. The object is now mine because the money I gave you, right, makes the kinyan. But Chazal say, Matam mashicha. What's the reason why Chazal say, no, pay money does not, you don't acquire it, right? You have to go ahead and actually pull or lift the item. So right? So therefore, in this case, so what's going to happen? I buy an object off of Mark. I say, okay, I'll go ahead and buy, your hay, right, from you, straw. Fine, a bundle of straw. It's in the barn. Here's $100. I'm going to go to the barn and get it. I get to the barn, it's all burnt up. So what's going to happen? Mark's going to say, right, the fire happened after you gave me the money, right? It burned while you owned it, right? During that hour between the time you got to my barn, right? So really, midaraisa, I should take a loss. So because this could be something, or because of people's, prevent people from buying, they're going to be worried that the seller is going to go ahead and step on games. They'll say, you know what? You don't buy it until you actually basically see the object and you do mashicha to it, and therefore we know it's all on the up and up. So therefore, in this case, we say money doesn't work. Why? So when a person pays for an object, that's normally how it works, right? However, but something that's not common, i.e. in the other case, right? That the way basically Mark got the donkey from me was through my debt, right? I owed him $100 because I bought his cow and I never paid him for it, right? And therefore I had a debt to him, and he says with that debt we'll do it. So therefore, in such a case, we'll say no. since this case is not common, so therefore we'll say in this case that money or the debt does acquire the animal, even though there was no mashicha, and therefore Mark does acquire the animal wherever it is, because there's no gzeira in that case. According to Reish Lakish, who holds that no, most doesn't work. Mashicha is the doraisa way. How does Mark go ahead and acquire my donkey from the debt? He didn't do mashicha yet. Why should it be acquired yet? So if he says that the meat of the animal or the donkey can go ahead and do chalipin, that works out. Why? Because he holds that what does the kinyan? Chalipin through peiros or through a chamor can work, right? Because you don't need, it's not the kesef that does it, it's the chalipin that does it, right? So therefore that would work in this case. But Sarichi said like Rav Sheshes, that repairs of the chalipin, but Tarska Sheshes, Rav Sheshes, Eli said like Rav Nachman, that repairs like the chalipin, right? But if he holds like Rav Nachman that fruit cannot go ahead and do chalipin, umatbea like kani, and also the coin cannot do it because also kesef is not the right. So the mukila, right? How could you go ahead and say in this case that he acquires the donkey? So Rav Sheshes relate. It must be like Rav Sheshes. Basically going back to the original teretz that we say that actually the Rav Sheshes is the second one, right? So he must go ahead and say like Rav Sheshes that either A, that it does go ahead and peiros do peiros avdi chalipin, or even like the first teretz to say that something which is nishum or dam b'acher, something which is assessed to be money, that could be used, and therefore he holds like Rav Sheshes that peiros can go ahead and make the chalipin. Fine. Time is it? Good. So perfect. A Mishnah. So let's try and take it to the next Mishnah. I think it's the Mishnah number base. So yeah, let's try to go to the top there. So Rishus Hagvoa the Kasef, Rishus Hahedyat B'Chazak. So when it comes to the Rishus of the Gavoa for the Hektish, right, the Bedekabayas, so their Rishus, they acquire things just through Kasef. And we'll explain the cases. But a commoner, he has to go ahead and make an act of chazak upon it. And therefore, saying something to hedyot is similar, is the same thing as when it comes to a commoner to actually do masira hand of the object is just as good as one pledges or says it. For when it comes to hedyot.
In the case with the bale of hay.
Yeah.
If Hektish were to buy it.
Right. Yeah, so the one's actually going to bring all these cases. We're going to bring all four scenarios in terms of fluctuation of price. It doesn't go into some damage, but fluctuation of prices, if it changes after one kinyan work, so we'll see. Let's see. So Tarabanan Kates so Gizbar Shinas and Mais Behema. So the Gizbar comes and gives money for an animal, afilu behema b'seif eilam, even if the animal's outside of the world, then kana, he acquires the animal. It's now his, wherever it is, kesef is kaina on behalf of the Gavoa, right? He's the Gizbar, the treasurer of the Beis Hamikdash. However, rather a commoner goes ahead and wants to purchase an animal, like kana achim shach, right? He doesn't go ahead and acquire it until he goes ahead and does mashicha until he pulls the animal. So Ketzad, how do we say that saying for the treasury? This is just like Mesiras Lahadiyot. Hay Meshar Zeh Oila buys a hektish. One who says this axe is an Oila Korban, or this house is hektish. It goes to the Bedekabayas. The value of it goes to them. Afilu b'Seif Oilam, even if it's not around them, it's the other side of the world. Kana acquires it. However, Behediyot, if he says this animal goes to so and so, lo kana ad sheyimshach v'yachzik, until he goes ahead and does mashicha and does a chazaka to it. So mashku b'mana. So let's say he went ahead and he did mashicha, right? And it was worth a mana. So a regular person did mashicha by mana. But he speak livdaiso. So remember, he has to give the money and also take the animal, right? If I just pull the animal, it's not mine yet. I have to pay for it, right? So mashka b'mana. But he speak livdaiso ad shem rasayim. So let's say. Right, he did mashicha, right? That and the animals were 100, but he didn't go ahead and redeem it yet. In other words, he didn't go ahead and be paid that for the mikdash until Asham Masayim, until it goes to 200. But he could say, look, I already did the kinyan on it, and I want to redeem it, and therefore I should only pay 100. Nice say Masayim. He has to give 200. My time, what's the reason? V'nasan hakesef v'kamlo. So the pasuk says in Vayikra it says V'imgol yigal es asada hamakdish so v'yosef chamisha kesef Allah v'kamlo. It's only after he gives money is it his. So he has to finish paying. So if he didn't finish paying, he didn't get it yet. He didn't finish redeeming it, and therefore he didn't redeem it at 100. The current price is 200. You got to go ahead and pay 200. So mashcha b'masayim, if he went ahead and took on those 200, but then he finally gets around to going ahead and pay the money. It's only worth 100. They say masayim. Guess what? Still 200. My time, right? So we shouldn't say that the koyach of the hedyot, right, was better than that of hektish, right? And therefore he has to go ahead and pay the higher amount. Now, padu b'masayim. Let's say the other way, right? He gives the money, there's the mashicha. So padu b'masayim, if he goes and redeems it when it was 200, but he speak l'mayshcha, but he didn't go ahead and pull it sheva b'mana. Nice masayim gets 200. Why? My time of nasana cuts become low because it goes after the time when he gave the money, and therefore he gave the money for 200. Padu b'mana. If he went ahead and redeemed it, he gave the money for 100. He speak l'mayshcha sheva b'masayim. Then he begins to pull it. Now it's 200. Ma shepada padu. It's good. He gets it at 100. Or ask, if he doesn't have money, he only gives 100. So why should we say that? We say hektish always has an upper hand. They have a better position. So over here, they should be like the hedyot and be able to go ahead and get it at, and they should be able to charge 200. So when it says to the hedyot lav misha parakai, says no. But even though yes, enachinami. Right, the hedyot does go ahead and take it. But if you have a case of where a person does, right, where he pays for something and the time he takes it, right, it goes up in value, right. Nevertheless, he does get the lower price, but he has basically a sort of like a curse, right, of mishapara, right. Mishapara is basically someone who's reneging on that which was done. So therefore, he's taking this animal. So basically, even though it technically it works, but therefore he basically has sort of like this curse upon it. It's not a good thing. So therefore, yes, Einachinami works, but we're not going to go ahead and say, oh, the Mikdash acquires it, because then if you say the Mikdash is like the person that acquires it, it's like they have this curse of Mishapara, right? Person who goes ahead and reneges on something that even though it was agreed upon a certain price, you want more. Right, that's not technically, a kosher b'yosher way, and therefore we don't say hektish goes and says, "Oh, you get the other price," even though the agreed upon price was lower. All right, we'll stop here at the Mishnah. Everyone have a wonderful day, and